Welcome. So, most survivors, they don't stay because they're in love. Now, you might think you're in love, but let's talk about that, right? Survivors tend to stay in abusive relationships, frankly, because they're hoping that the version of the person that they met at the start, that one that seemed so kind and attentive and loving, they want that person to come back. Now, abuse doesn't start with cruelty, right? Popular opinion for people thinking that abusers start really obvious and like you picked them, right? But it doesn't start with cruelty. It starts with intensity, and it starts with warmth and charm, and frankly a version of love that is often so overwhelming that it feels like fate. Like, this is what I've been waiting for my whole life, this is what I've deserved, this is what I want, oh my god. But it's not real love. It's actually a trap. Once you've kind of tasted it, right? Once they take it away, you will do almost anything to get that feeling back. I've had clients that say, I don't even want flowers or gifts, right? I just want him to look at me the way that he used to look at me. And this is what it does to you, right? You start begging for things that you used to get every single day. So for those that don't know me, my name is Lisa Sunny. I am a certified relationship coach and founder of Stronger Than Before. And I have coached many, many women, thousands of women, on breaking free from trauma bonds. I've written 4 books, and I have a breakthrough course called the Trauma Bond Recovery Course that you should absolutely check out if you're trying to break this line of thinking and stop begging for the bare minimum. So here's how we get trained to accept less and less over time. It begins with love bombing. And, I hear a lot of people even describe big, grandiose, sweeping things in the beginning. Oh, you're my soulmate. They don't all start with that much intensity, but they do all start with kindness and validation and affection and love. And it's very tailored to you. It's very specific to what you like, what works for you, what gets you feeling really attached. And so it could be over the top affection. It could be constant communication, compliments that just feel really custom built for you and for your soul. Okay. You think you have found someone who finally sees you, who finally values you, who just wants you in a way that nobody else ever has before. And you wonder, like, what's really happening here, right? This is just incredible. But the truth is, here's what's really happening. They are gathering intel. They're using things like mind mapping. And honestly, a really great book to learn more about mind mapping is called Run Like Hell by Dr. Nadine. She's the Wolf of Wall Street's ex-wife turned psychotherapist. She's incredible. So please check out that book. But they're learning what you've longed for. They're learning where your wounds live. And then they're filling those gaps like a master manipulator. They're con artists. Your nervous system really bonds with them so deeply in this stage. And so they're going to feel really familiar, really safe. And honestly, it feels addictive. Like, you just want to be around this person. It feels safe. It feels incredible. But slowly they pull back. And in this phase, you are emotionally bonding with them. Your nervous system is bonding with them. And that's really key here. It sets the framework for the next things that are about to happen. But we're talking about this pullback. It's usually subtle at first, right? It's not usually like a switch. And I think, again, that's what a lot of people think, like, okay, fine, he started nice, but then he just turned into a terrible person. You could have left then. And it's not really how it works, right? There's sort of a delayed response, like a forgotten promise, a sharp tone that didn't exist before, an argument that was really strange and something unexpected for what you're used to in the relationship. And you justify it. They're tired. They had a bad day. Everyone has flaws. People argue. It makes sense. But actually, what's really happening is they are testing what you will tolerate. You have no idea that you're being tested, but you are being tested. And so you start to work a little bit harder, right? You bring more love, more effort, more understanding. You try to get back what they were freely giving before. And this is where the pattern really shifts, because now you're not receiving, you're pursuing. And they know that they kind of have you at this point. They know what you're willing to put up with. And they're watching you work hard to get something that used to be free. So they might occasionally throw you a scrap of warmth, and then your whole system is like lit up like Christmas, right? You get the dopamine hit. and it feels like relief. And I think it feels like proof that they still love you. And this pattern, I often describe it using bread. I mean, it makes sense because we talk about breadcrumbs. But let's say in the beginning of the relationship, you get a whole loaf of bread, you get a fresh baguette every time you see them. And then one day you get a half. Everybody has a bad day, right? You can't have a full baguette every day. Okay, fine. And then you get a full one again. Then you get a half. And then you get full for like a week. And then you get a half and then crumbs and then, like little pieces. It just gets less and less, but it fluctuates. But there are always days where you're getting more. Often towards the end of these relationships, which, we're fast forwarding a bit, you aren't getting full anymore. Often in those cases, it becomes kind of the absence of abuse feels like a full one, but you don't even realize it. And you've actually lowered the bar, like lowered it so far again and again and again. And this is when basic decency starts to feel like a gift you don't even deserve. You start begging them to just be respectful. You start begging them to just not call you a B word, to just spend time with you. Literally, all you're asking for is some quality time. And you don't understand why they're not giving it when they used to. And they're probably telling you that you're the cause of why they're not giving it to you anymore. So let's talk about some of the tactics. Let's uncover these tactics of how you are conditioned to settle for less. So I think personally, one of the most sinister things about emotional abuse is that it's not just what is said, it is how they twist your reality until you stop trusting yourself at all. And he doesn't scream every time, right? Sometimes he just doesn't understand you. I don't get it. I don't understand why you're so upset about this. But meanwhile, what's actually happening is he's pretending to not understand you, because when you don't understand something, someone's going to try to keep explaining it to you, and you think like, this is obvious, why, how could I have to explain this? So you keep trying, and the more you try to explain it, the more they just don't get it. They get it. He gets it. They get it. Absolutely. So you might say something clear and heartfelt, and he'll just kind of like tilt his head like, I don't really understand what you're so upset about. But he absolutely knows what you're upset about. And I think a good sign of this too is that if you did to him what he's doing to you, how mad would he be, right? So you try again. You over-explain. You get emotional. You spiral because you are literally just trying to make him understand and it's not working. It's so frustrating. But he's pretending not to. But you focus on trying to be heard instead of seeing the truth that he doesn't want to hear you. Abusers often yell so that they can control you and have power, and that so that you'll obey them. Well, victims might yell too, but they're yelling because they're not being heard. So there's a difference, right? There's a big difference, and it has a lot to do with intention versus impact, but I digress. I think often what I see is he withholds resolution. And so there's never like a true ending to a fight. There's never a solution. It's just kind of a pause. And I know for me, I can really remember, especially this one specific instance where he was yelling and I was worked up and yelling. And I was so frustrated that he didn't understand something. And it worked me up into like practically frothing at the mouth. And then randomly he was like, can we just watch TV? I was like, pardon me? And he was like, I'm tired. Can we just watch TV? Now, I was so desperate for the arguing to be over and the roller coaster to be over that I was like, I guess so. And we just sat there. No resolution. Now, that was very common, right? But I think eventually you want to break the silence and bring something up. And I think, I talk about these no-win situations. You start thinking, okay, so I know he's going to be upset if I bring it up on this day, so I won't bring it up then. Or he's going to be, really in a bad mood after work, so I won't bring it up then. I'll wait. I'll talk about it on Saturday. But then Saturday, it's like, we're having a good day. I don't want to bring up a fight for no reason. There's never a good time to bring up your issues. No resolution. Never an appropriate time to talk about anything that makes them feel bad or makes them self-reflect in any way. And so there's no apology, there's no ownership, there is just silence. You go back and maybe you even say you're sorry for your tone. You're just trying to like, okay, fine, I'll take responsibility for my part in this. I shouldn't have yelled, even though you were absolutely driven to that. You might end up comforting them. I've seen that a lot. My clients describe that a lot. I experience that a lot. So you might he turns everything into a character attack. And, if you say that hurt me, you're going to get back something like, God, you're so dramatic, or like, here we go again, you're playing the victim. And the conversation is always going to sort of shift into your flaws, or your reaction, his issue with your reaction. It'll never be about his behavior. And that's the point. It's a tactic to deflect. And so he flips the script constantly. One week he's the victim, and the next week he's your savior, and the next one he puts up with you, and you're lucky that he puts up with you. He gaslights you in just really small ways daily. Like, you might say to him, like, you said you'd be home by 6, and it's like, I never said that. Or, you said you were going to come home straight home after work. Well, I did. No, you went to a bar. Yeah, well, that doesn't count because, and it's just nonsense, right? But it's infuriating, but you know the truth, but they want to gaslight you to just make you doubt it. I don't even know if they care if you believe them. They just want you to doubt yourself. So all of these moments just kind of chip away at your sense of clarity. And you get punished in so many different ways. So maybe they withdraw affection. Every time you get upset, he shuts down. And coercive control really plays a factor in here. And an example I always use, because it's so cliche, is like, you can't wear your hair like that. I don't like women with short hair. End of discussion. You have to wear long hair. That's what you have to have. That's really overt, right? That seems obvious. It's obviously controlling. And however he phrases it, right? But then you've got the flip side of like, you can cut your hair short, but then I won't talk to you, or I won't take pictures with you, or it just makes you feel gross for having short hair. Or you can go out with your friends, no problem, but then you get stonewalled. Or when you're out with your friends, he calls you or texts you 47 times. So you are being controlled because you're learning that there's a consequence, even though you have permission to do whatever you want, you really don't. And so maybe he sleeps on the couch or leaves the house for hours. But the point is that when you express your pain, you lose me. That's the message. And that is withdrawal. And that makes you reach out and try to seek more connection, right? So in this case, what you're going to do, and it's natural, you're not even consciously thinking this, but you stop expressing pain, you bottle it up, you try to be easier to love, you jump through the hoops. Can I be more supportive, more kind, more happy-go-lucky, more agreeable, more whatever they're asking for just to make it stop? This is actually the resignation phase of getting into a trauma bond, when you just sort of like, fine, I'll try it your way, right? And so you're told this whole time that you're too sensitive and too emotional and too insecure rather. You start wondering, like, is that true? And you hear things like, you've never had these problems with anyone ever before you. And so you start to be like, well, if I'm the only person he's had these problems with, then maybe it is me, right? And it's brutal. But the point is that he's minimizing the harm, right? It's just a joke. Lighten up. You take everything so seriously. You always make a big deal out of nothing. It's like you want to argue. You hear this constantly. And so he blames your past, right? Clearly you have trust issues. It's not me. I'm not doing anything wrong. You're insecure because of your ex, because of your past, because of your upbringing, because of your trauma. You need to go figure yourself out. That has nothing to do with me, right? But he uses your trauma against you. Like, maybe you've confessed that you've been cheated on in the past, and then now it becomes somebody else hurt you. It's not me that's hurting you. You're crazy. And you start to wonder, like, am I harboring all this old trauma, or am I reacting to this person? But they're so convinced, right? They know, but they seem so convinced that you're the problem, and you want to believe them. Don't underestimate how much you want to believe them. He is going to continue to move the goalpost, and what happened last week and was okay is controlling this week, right? What he promised last month he'll never do again this month, that never even happened. What are you talking about? And so he'll, just examples, of course, right? But he'll compare you to other women, exes, coworkers, social media, Instagram models, right? Other women don't get so worked up. Other women sleep with their husbands. I don't know what your problem is. And so you hear these things of like, you should see how Kelly treats her husband. But the message in all of this, there's one message: you're the problem. You're the problem. That's all that matters, is that they can convince you that you are the problem. You are causing the problems. And to be fair, I think in many ways, particularly if we're talking about clinical narcissists, because what I'm talking about really applies to abusive relationships, regardless of narcissism. But a clinical narcissist, literally the only problem is that you keep bringing it up. There is no problem. It's just you talking. If you would just zip it, there would be no problem. Like, they believe that. That's crazy making in and of itself, isn't it? But he'll wait until you are calm, and then he'll act like everything is fine. And then there's still no accountability, right? No cleanup, no resolution. It's you just feel crazy for being upset. And so you start to try to like reset yourself to match his emotional timeline, but you feel like you're on a roller coaster because you can't shut your feelings on and off the way that an abusive person seems to be able to, the way they can kind of compartmentalize. And these tactics are not random. It's like, oh, I don't understand. It's all happening. I've actually described it like a perfect orchestra sometimes, like all the instruments, abuse tactics, are all playing at the same time, and they work so well together to confuse you and to create a trauma bond so that you stay, to create cognitive dissonance so that you can't get clear and can't make a decision. And so the end result is that you doubt yourself, you stop speaking up, and you actually often start basically begging. And not really even for love necessarily. I feel like at this point, you're not begging for love. You're begging for the bare minimum, for basic love, for neutrality, for decency. Like, just like basic things like being listened to, spending time with, being looked at with kindness, not disdain. And that is not love. That is mental warfare. It is truly warfare. And when I walk through this with my private clients, I'm telling you, the moment that they see it clearly, everything starts to change, right? It wasn't me. It was the system that he built to keep me doubting myself. So something that's really interesting about abusive relationships, we talked about it a little bit, is that they often are kind. They include kindness. And so to say that kindness is abusive is like, what? But when an abusive person is kind, it serves a purpose. So there is something called intermittent positive reinforcement. You never know when you're going to get the kindness. That's the intermittent part, right? Listen, if you knew that every Friday afternoon he was going to be good as gold, you'd be looking forward to Fridays. You could anticipate that. The intermittent part of this is that it's like, what's it going to be like today? Oh my God. The eggshells that we always talk about, right? So that creates part of the addiction. But the kindness itself is a powerful, powerful psychological tool. It's actually what makes slot machines so addictive, because you put it in, maybe you get it. You put it in, maybe you don't get it, but you get it sometimes, and that keeps you going of like, maybe I just hit it one more time, right? That's what makes abusive relationships so hard to leave. It's the cycle. Every client that I talk to says to me, but he's not mean all the time. I know that. Correct. The abuse is only one piece, right? And the good, the kindness, the sweetness, the good exists to facilitate the bad. And that is mind-blowing for some people, that kindness is actually a weapon. How can a kindness be abusive? It's when it's being used and delivered in a way that is meant to confuse and meant to keep you stuck. It is not because they genuinely care. It is not because they are a good person who does bad things. It is because they are a bad person who pretends to be nice just to keep you, just to suck you in. That is the entire function of positive intermittent reinforcement, and it is not talked about enough at all. You never know when the next moment of kindness is coming, so you stay and you hope that it's just around the corner, because it always comes back. And when you're in the lows of the abuse, you're craving the highs. You want it so badly that you're willing to put up with the abuse just to get that kindness at some point again. And as I said, sometimes the kindness in some relationships, it's never really that kind anymore. It actually is just the absence of abuse, which is worse in my opinion. But those little flickers of warmth, right? It's not enough to meet your needs, but it is enough to reset your hope, right? You're not really getting what you want. The kindness is never really enough at some point, but it's just enough that it pushes you forward with hope. And hope is brutal in an abusive relationship. It's not something you want. I don't believe in hope in an abusive relationship. It's just like, I hope he changes. There's no action in hope, right? So you're going to start tiptoeing, guessing, strategizing, trying to be good enough and hope that they treat you well. And this is where your body is in fight or flight. And in fact, you are fawning often. It doesn't happen to everyone, but you sort of strategize like, how can I make him in a good mood today? Because I really want this weekend to go well. We have to go visit my family this weekend, so I need to make sure he's in a good mood. You're managing, you're over functioning, which is the point. And that's why so many women in abusive relationships find themselves doing all the cooking, all the cleaning. You're taking the trash out. You're doing the man jobs. You're doing everything because they won't do anything because they've made you fully responsible for them. And I know that's not every case, but I just see it constantly with my clients. And I experienced it too. So when they do treat you well again, you feel rewarded. You feel relieved. You feel like you matter again. And you're back in the cycle. You're addicted again. But the pattern's just going to continue because then they take it away, right? You try harder, you get your little crumb, your little bread crumb, and then you feel grateful. And that's not love. That's conditioning. That's training. That's trauma. And it's your body mistaking survival for connection. So it's not your brain. It is a physical, biochemical response. So many survivors that I work with are like, I feel crazy. Why can't I just leave? Which is the title of an amazing book by Dr. Kristen Milstead. But why can't I just leave him? Because your nervous system is still chasing the version of him that made you feel whole. You're not weak. You're trauma bonded. And they know exactly how to keep you that way. So first of all, if any of this is hitting you, if this is like, oh my God, yes, hit subscribe, because I'm sharing truths like this that so many of us were just not taught to recognize. And so this is exactly the kind of pattern that I help people break in my private coaching, as well as the Trauma Bond Recovery course. So I just, you can break the bond. You need the right tools. I teach that. So follow me here, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Check me out across all platforms because I post different content on all platforms. So the interesting thing is, okay, so the kindness has disappeared. Why don't you leave, right? Why don't you just leave? Because if the kindness is gone, but here's the thing, when good moments fade, you don't leave because you remember what they were like. And that feels real. You literally experienced it, right? We're not talking about a book you read or a movie you watched. This is your life. You've literally in real life had good times and feel a genuine attachment to this person. But truly, what you're loyal to is that version of them, not the current version. But it's like a fantasy of maybe they might become that person that they used to be again. We talk about living in the past in the sense of who they used to be. And then there's the potential of who they could be if they would just get it together like they keep saying they will. And yet it'll never happen because that's not who they are. This is who they are. This guy, the one who's mean, that's the real person. So the worst part is that they know this. They know. If I could scream this right now, they know. This belief that they don't get it is just, they absolutely know. So right when you start to pull away, they're going to throw you just enough kindness to suck you back into the relationship. And that's the trap. Okay. That is the trap. He apologized. Oh my God. He was affectionate. He was vulnerable. Just a flash, but you saw it. He promised to try harder. He promised therapy. Ooh, narcissists never go to therapy, right? He must not be one. He must really want to change. He cut off his mistress. He promised whatever. He apologized. He said, they get you. And you start going, maybe there's hope. Hope is brutal. Hear me when I say hope is the downfall in these relationships. Trauma bonds are built on hope. They feed off of hope. Hope is the thing you need to destroy. They are going to let you suffer just long enough that the relief of their kindness actually feels euphoric. You are addicted to the cycle, to the feelings, not to the person. You never give them that kind of credit, but you are feeling addicted. And so even when the kindness becomes rare, it actually becomes more valuable because it's rare. So you start working for it instead of expecting it. This is how the bar gets put in hell, just so we're clear about that expression. When we talk about the bar being in hell, this is the method of how it's done. You start to tell yourself stories, right? And maybe they're telling you stories or they have told you stories, but you start saying things to yourself like, he had a rough childhood. His dad was mean to him. His dad left. His dad's in jail. His mom's a B word. He wasn't shown how to really love. His family just wasn't like that, and they just don't know. And I can help them if I stay long enough, if I just love him through this. He talks about being abandoned. And I mean, I'm not going to abandon him because I'm loyal, right? He really values loyalty. Yeah, I bet. I bet abusive men love loyalty. Not earned, of course, right? Blind loyalty. Now they're going to flip the narrative often, not always, but the coverts definitely do, right? They're the victim now. You're abandoning me. I've never loved anybody like this before, and you're just going to leave me. You're going to destroy our family. It's just like, ugh, cry me a river, right? But truth is, say that on the outside of it, when you're on the inside of it, like that guilt, that's the hook. That's the hook. Other times, maybe they explode, right? We talk about narcissistic rage or just the typical rage of an abusive man. You might see silence, which is also like a quiet rage, but rage nonetheless. And all of this, right? It's a way to destabilize you and just keep you scared of what leaving might mean. There's consequences for leaving. Now, the emotional roller coaster that you're on, it is straight up intentional. It is absolutely intentional because when you are disoriented, you're going to cling to what's familiar, even if it's painful. And so you stay. And it's not because you're weak, it's because they have made it impossible to imagine leaving without regret, without guilt, or without fear. It doesn't feel like it's even possible. Now, I help women overcome exactly that. And I watch women who thought they could never not feel those things, not feel those things. So it's possible. But let's talk about what healing really actually looks like, right? Because here's the turning point. Instead of asking, why doesn't he treat me better? Why doesn't he understand? And you actually start asking, why do I believe this is the best I can get? Why do I believe this is the best I can get? Ask, everything shifts when you start looking inside you and stop looking externally and stop looking for answers with a liar. You're never going to get the answers from them. So healing really comes from grieving the fantasy. And it is a fantasy, this version of him, right? The version of them that you fell for that truly never really existed. You were in love with who they pretended to be, and that's still what you feel like you love is that version. But we want to just like take a hammer and smash that version because that version is filled with hope. Hope is the downfall. Okay. You need to set a new baseline. Kindness is not a prize. Respect is non-negotiable. You are your own priority. Peace is a priority. You stop chasing closure from them. We want accountability. We want them to just apologize, to admit what they've done. They're never, ever going to do it. Even the ones that admit it, because it does happen rarely, right? And this is the tease of change of like, you're right. You're right. I was mean. I shouldn't have said that. I'm going to go to therapy, blah, blah. And then they don't go or they do go and they start talking about, you're upsetting my boundaries. My therapist says you're the problem. They really start to confuse everything. But you are not going to get closure from someone like this. They're not ever really going to admit it. The apologies are fake. The therapy is fake. They're not really interested. It's so rare. And I have posted other videos talking about what change really looks like. So watch those ones, talk about what change really looks like, because this is not what it looks like at all. But you need to start creating clarity for yourself and living in reality. That actually means relearning what safety looks like and frankly, what it feels like. And at first, a lot of people report that it feels boring and flat and kind of empty. And honestly, that's okay because your body, your nervous system, it's just used to chaos. And so you need to settle your nervous system and you can learn grounding techniques, distress tolerance, coping mechanisms. There's a lot of things. And, breath work is one, but a lot of people don't necessarily have that kind of vibe of wanting to do breath work. Though I will tell you, I didn't used to, and it works. But you can, bilateral stimulation. You can go to the gym. You can take a bubble bath. You can watch a show. Just distract yourself. You just need to regulate. Learn how to bring yourself back down. Start reconnecting to yourself. That version of you that existed before the gaslighting, before the manipulation, before the conditioning. Who were you? Who could you have become without all this, right? You stop proving your worth. You stop trying to justify what you've been through, your pain. You stop defending yourself. You stop begging. You stop explaining yourself. You just, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not doing this anymore. It's a really hard commitment to make and actually action, you know? I think people make the mental commitment, but the actions that are part of that, it's hard. I just want to validate that. That is hard. But I say this to my children, but it applies to anyone at any age. It's hard and you can do it. You can do hard things. And stop expecting it to be easy and just do what's hard, because that's the path out. Not hoping for a magic pill, not hoping for someone to say the one thing that's going to make it all click for you. There's no one thing. It's a bunch of things. It's all of these things. And you can do all of these hard things. You absolutely can. I see this shift constantly in my coaching clients. Just that moment where I'm done explaining myself to someone who just doesn't listen. I'm done. Choose to be done. There's a lot of logistics that make it hard. So we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about the emotional pieces. But hard is almost an understatement. It just totally, hard is not quite the word, right? It feels impossible, but it's not. And so if you feel drained and if you feel diminished and you feel frankly dehumanized, you're not in a relationship. That's not what this is, right? This is captivity. And that's what a trauma bond feels like. You feel stuck and overwhelmed and crazy and like you love them, but you also hate them. They're the knife and the Band-Aid. They're the pain and the comfort. It's horrible. It's so horrible. And so you were never too much. You were trying to survive something that just honestly kept taking from you. And begging for the bare minimum doesn't make you weak. It means that you were in a system that trained you to feel unworthy, and you can untrain yourself, okay? You really can. So if this spoke to you, I want you to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next time we talk about this and the topics just like this. These patterns really run so deep, and it takes repetition, it takes community, and it takes compassion if you really want to unlearn these things. So if you're ready for more than just awareness, you're actually ready to rebuild and break free of your trauma bond, I would love to have you inside of the Trauma Bond Recovery course. It's a really affordable, self-paced program, or working with me one-on-one. I also host groups, and I have a private membership club called the Toxic Free Relationship Club. Honestly, this work is so sacred, but it's life-changing, and you don't have to do it by yourself. You absolutely don't. So I'm just going to read some of the comments right now. I see some familiar names, but yeah, happy healing. Definitely. I know, right? It's so hard, right? We don't look through the same lens. It's so true. Hope is the downfall. Yes. Repeating what I said. It's so true, right? And someone wrote, so just because you would never do a thing doesn't mean others wouldn't. That's one of the biggest difficulties in this whole thing, is that you think that because you would never do that others don't. The way that you see the world, the lens through which you see the world, is not how they see the world. They have a very world at war, black and white mentality, and you don't. The world is gray, right? Some people are good, some people are bad, some people are both. And that's actually what makes it harder to see them. But they have a pretty significant cognitive distortion in being able to see things as very black or white. You are either all good or all bad. And when you start pushing back and asking for more than the bare minimum, you become the enemy. And that's why they seek to punish and coerce you into submission. This is all about power and control. That's the fundamental goal. So even when they say fine, leave me, they're going to guilt you into staying somehow, right? Because that's not what they actually want. That's not the goal, to make you leave. Harmony wrote this, right? At some point, you'll be begging for the abuse to stop. Then you'll be begging for your pets or your children's lives. And oh my God, right? But so true. It is. You literally begging. Because it's funny, some people were sort of oh, just begging for the bare minimum. Literally begging. Please, would you just be a decent human being and just treat me you're not even asking to be treated well. You're asking for them to stop being overtly awful. Can you imagine, right? Here we all are. It's horrible. Absolutely horrible. It is one of the most painful things. It really is. And I am so passionate about helping people break free of this for this exact reason, because it is wildly difficult to get yourself out of. But I have faith. I have done it. And I kind of joke, I'm just some woman from somewhere. You know what I mean? It's, if I can do it, you can do it. We can do this. you can do hard things. So thank you so much for joining me today, and check out my next videos. Thanks so much.